Hey, you're listening to Profoundish. Guess what, everybody? It's December. So the biggest day of the year that we all look forward to is coming up soon. And what day is that? The day of the Game Awards. Yes, that's right, the Game Awards. And they're coming up soon. So Weston and I decided it'd be a fun idea to go over our predictions for the winners of multiple categories of the Game Awards, including Game of the Year. What will we pick? Keep listening to find out. This is Profoundish. What's funnier? Like three or four people clapping, or like two people clapping?
Well, out of context, neither one is funny.
Here's what I mean.
So, people clapping.
Listen, you can imagine the context. So, like, someone gives like a big speech or something, and it's supposed to be some grand, epic speech, but then either four people are clapping or two people are clapping. Which one's funnier to you? Because there's a big difference between 4 and 2 claps.
I feel like the fewer people that are clapping after a thing that, like, maybe it's expected to clap, it's not so much funny as awkward, or, as the kids say, cringe.
Right.
And I guess you could consider that funny. That's like that Office level of cringe, like funny, where it's like, oh, it's awkward, so it's funny. But I have a hard time laughing at things that are like awkward funny. They're just awkward to me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. So in general, I know we've talked about this from time to time, but The Office, where do you stand on that in general? I forgot. You've seen some episodes, I know.
I have, and they've got like funny bits, but also just a lot of The Office is just really awkward situations where people are like uncomfortably, like just in an uncomfortable position, and that's where I'm like, just I don't know.
You just can't do it.
It's a different kind of, I'm not trying to bash like people that think like awkward things are funny or whatever. There's a certain level of it that I can't wrap my brain around as being funny. It's just a different I don't have another word for it either. It's just, I have the awkward response where I'm like uncomfortable, but it's not the same uncomfortable as in like watching like something like a disaster happen where you feel like bad or sad or something. It's a different, it's like a different level of discomfort.
I know what you mean. I mean, obviously I think that's why The Office was such a success when it came out too, because nobody was doing it like that, I guess, and just capturing these real awkward human moments. And I've always been drawn to that anyway. As a songwriter and creative in general, I just like capturing those human moments. In the ugly ones, too, and the weird ones. So I think that's why I love The Office so much and other stuff like it. However, there was a line, and this is more embarrassment, like secondhand embarrassment and less cringe. But have you ever seen Borat? Remember that movie?
I have not. I do remember that movie.
Okay.
I remember when it came out. I think they made more than one. But
I think, or they did a sequel or something, yeah.
I remember seeing the previews for that when it was new, and I just thought it looked bad. I just thought it looked terrible.
Right.
This is just, the whole premise seems like a terrible idea.
And it was, but that's what people loved about it, because it was so bad. But it was also made to look and be bad. That was kind of the whole intent. But just the stuff that this guy would do, a lot of things I can't even really say on this podcast. It's so horrible what he's done. But that's part of the comedy of it. And some of it, because I was kind of told by a friend at the time, watch it. It's hilarious, right? And there's only really, almost everything he recorded was real reactions of people when he did these weird things to people. These weren't scripted. So this ended in multiple arrests. I think there was a lawsuit or something too. Like there was a ton of crap going on because this guy was doing weird, horrible things to real people. Like, for example, he was
typical.
I'll put it this way:
typical prank YouTuber influencer type character before that was even a thing.
Yeah, like gone extreme. Like put the YouTube pranks mixed with Jackass and then bring it up to 11. And that's kind of what he was doing. And of course he was doing the whole like Pakistani thing too and all that. But for example, there was quite a few of indecent exposure, scenes, some of which were very like overtly sexual as well. And these are real people being like, it's ridiculous that this movie got made and put out, but it did. And I remember some of those scenes. It was like, oh my God, I cannot even watch it. I got so sick to my stomach, and I'm just calling it secondhand embarrassment. I don't know what else to call it besides that. I just felt embarrassed. And he wasn't. He was doing it. He had no shame. But like, I don't know how you couldn't. That's just, it's crazy. But then I think about, though, like, that's not quite the same as Impractical Jokers,
right?
To me. And maybe it's because of the severity of it that's not as severe. But they say some pretty crazy stuff to people, too.
A lot of the Impractical, which I don't know, there's something about the presentation of it. So, like, yeah, Borat, like, he had the Pakistani thing. He was doing this whole character, first and foremost. And I didn't see the movie, but, like, he was an offensive character. Whereas, and I'm sure there's stuff that in Impractical Jokers, because I've seen quite a few of those episodes, there might be stuff that, like, maybe goes too far, socially speaking. Maybe there's stuff that's been cut from that show that we haven't seen that might be a little on the worse end. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff that I've seen on that show, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's the, like, if it's something that someone says, it's like, did he just say that? Like, what? Like, it's that taken aback, what? I don't even understand what's happening to me in reality right now situation. Whereas Borat, which again, I didn't see, but I remember the previews, it's more of just like, please stop. The things that he would be doing is just like, please stop. Whereas in Practical Jokers, it's like, you just don't believe, like, it's just normal enough that you're not horribly upset, but just bizarre enough you don't understand what you're seeing. For the most part.
That's a good explanation. Yeah.
There are some people that have like worse or better responses to the jokes, don't get me wrong, but like there's something about it that's a little bit more grounded and a little bit more good-natured in Impractical Jokers, and that show comes off to me as actually funny, which, you know, when we're talking about like that cringe level, that awkward, that usually doesn't register as funny to me, Impractical Jokers gets around that somehow, and I can find that funny.
You know why? I think it goes back to me always hounding in on the human element. You can tell that they're real, like, best friends, all four of them. And I feel like sometimes, now granted, what they say to these people is hilarious, but sometimes their reactions to each other is what keeps me roped in more than anything. Like, there's something about their chemistry together. Because honestly, when I watched that show, and I watched it for years, because, I mean, I thought it was very funny too, it always kind of put me back to, like, just a more severe version of like our friend group, because we always kind of bust each other's chops and stuff when we're all together as guys. And like that kind of reminds me of that, except they're out there like just completely embarrassing the crap out of each other. But like I can relate to that to some degree too, and I love seeing that come through. That show went a long time. I don't know if it's still going, but I know that
they still play reruns of that all the time, and they've remixed episodes so that there's like the best ofs and stuff.
That's cool.
It plays everywhere.
It's definitely rewatchable. I know that Joe left. I know that he was done.
Oh, did he actually? So maybe they're not. Yeah, they're maybe not making new ones if they all decided to do their own thing. Which, I mean, I get it. They did that show for a good while, and they made their bag on that. And if they were to pursue other things, that makes sense.
Right, exactly. Well, I think for him, and I totally respect it. I think for him, it was more like, you know, I'm ready to kind of. I think like he recently became a dad. He's like, I want to be a family guy. Like I did the thing. We found success in this. But then the other guys, like I know Sal is kind of getting into stand-up. And I think Q and Murr are doing it too, but they're all kind of just pursuing what they want to pursue, which is cool. But I bet if I were True TV, and I know they do it because anytime I'm like in a hotel room or at somebody's house who has cable, if you go to True TV, it's nothing but Impractical Jokers.
You can find like reruns of Impractical Jokers most times of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Like that was such a great score for them, and it was probably such a huge risk. You know, like you never know, because who knows? They could have pitched that show to multiple networks, right? You never know. And then True TV is like, okay, fine. I mean, we don't have much going on, and then it ended up being a huge hit.
It's funny because it's not even all that original of a concept. Like I don't know, like Punk'd or something was big. You know, like just these sort of prankish type shows have existed for a while. It wasn't a unique concept. I think what just happened to make that show specifically so big was, again, the chemistry between all the friends and Impractical Jokers. It was just their chemistry, I think, worked really well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, they started on YouTube. Did you know that?
I knew that they started before the actual TV show. I couldn't remember what it was because I think I remember that they talked about it in an interview or an episode or something. I didn't remember it was YouTube, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, their troupe, because they were a comedy troupe, and they would make YouTube videos, and then they would also like tour locally because they're from like, I don't know if New York, but like Northeast, like that area, and they would tour around that area, and they were called the Tenderloins. That was their name.
I like that name.
I know, I like it too. I think you can still find some of those YouTube videos, but
probably
they're old now.
Somewhere. As long as True TV or whoever didn't say, we bought your image, the rights to your image, and we're taking your YouTube from you.
What a wild thought. Who knows?
Well, Alex, what's today's topic?
What is today's topic? This
is your episode.
Wait, I thought we agreed. Oh, yeah, you're right.
I'm like, I love talking about this, but I feel like we got some ground to cover today, Alex.
That's hilarious. For some reason, we went back and forth on this before we recorded, and I thought we landed on you going, but you're right. It is me.
I mean, well, I can go.
No, it's okay.
We can do either one.
Today's one of those rare occasions where it's my episode, and Weston knows what we're going to be talking about. So, coming up in a couple weeks, as of the time you're listening to this, is the Game Awards. And I love any excuse I can to talk to Weston about games because it's fun to do. And I thought it'd be fun if we kind of talked about our predictions for some of the big category winners for the Game Awards. Now, these aren't necessarily going to be our personal picks, but we can share those too. But these are what we think, just based on all the different factors, we think will actually take home the victory, including Game of the Year, of course. So I thought that'd be fun. And then if we've got some time in the back half, I thought we could also maybe dig more into your our epic long video game like tier list. I don't know if you ended up finding that.
Yes and no, but we can get to that in a minute. We can definitely do the games.
Okay.
Don't worry about
yes
it.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Okay.
But yes.
That sounds good. So before we do that, though, really quick, Weston, I did want to ask you, do you watch the Game Awards, or do you just kind of look at the highlights later, or?
No, so I'm somehow always out of the loop of things until after they've happened. This is how it always goes. I am blissful. I'm on Twitter all the time. I peruse Facebook. I'm on YouTube all the time. I have a curse. I don't know anything has happened until it's already happened. So, like, until you mentioned, like, the Video Game Awards. Now, I've seen a few things pop around about the Video Game Awards, but it's still, like, a ways out. By the time you guys, I think, hear this episode, it's like 2 weeks away or a week and a half away or whatever. People have been talking about it. Things have been going around. I know it exists, but I promise you, when the first week of December rolls around, I'm going to forget it exists. No one in my circles are going to be talking about it, and I bet you anything I'm going to miss the show. I bet you anything. That's what happens every year without fail.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Weston will not be watching the Game Awards, and not by choice.
Yeah, it's not because I've made the decision not to watch it. I will just have forgotten when it's happening, and no one will remind me. And by fair. No one, I mean like no friend group is going to just randomly text me. Somehow Twitter will not be talking about it. Just somehow, nothing will remind me.
Well, I will this year.
We'll see about that. We'll see about that.
You can hold me to it.
No, the curse. You will forget because of the curse. Yep. It'll be the day after. You're going to slap your face like, oh my God, I was going to tell Weston. And I'm going to just be blissfully unaware.
The curse. It's real. I know that I do watch it. I've watched it for quite a few years now. And the main reason why is, I love games, and I do like to look at the winners and stuff afterwards anyway, but when I was younger, I used to really get into like the Emmys and the Grammys, especially, and the Oscars. Like, I liked those when I was young, like a kid. I don't really care about any of that anymore, but I do kind of miss the awards show experience. I always thought those were kind of fun back in the day. So this kind of captures that well for me. And Game Awards is like continuously growing. In a recent episode, we talked about, the game industry is huge. And so it's kind of cool now to see pretty much like, if you've seen at least clips from the show, I mean, it's getting to like Grammy size level of an award show. I mean, everyone's all dressed up. There's a lot of people in there, a lot of big names, like, so it's gotten really huge, which is cool. So it kind of fills that old void for me.
It's cool because it's legitimizing it as a show and as a field, but it's also a little concerning because I know like the Oscars and the Emmys, they've tanked a lot in popularity because of being a little too stuffy, a little too like critical, and a little the shows feel detached from the actual experience of everyone watching the show. And I don't just mean like, oh, none of the popular movies win or whatever. Like, it's not just that. There's a stuffiness to it where it just feels like there's no, like, the show is not, it doesn't run in a way that actually brings on any engagement activity or anything fun for the audience to like do, other than we're all going to sit here on a stage and just like congratulate each other and basically ignore the audience. You know what I mean? The people watching on TV really don't care about them at all. We're all here just to talk about ourselves. So I'm concerned that if the Video Game Awards gets too stuffy, we might see something like that. But this year, I think this is the first year. This is the first year I'm aware of it. This year, there is actually a fan voting component to the Video Game Awards. You can go and vote.
I heard this.
For your choices in all the categories. And that doesn't, I think I've seen it like in terms of how they numerically apply the votes to the scores and all that stuff. The fan vote's only worth like 10% of the score. So it's not enough to completely sway anything if everyone just sort of piles onto a game at 4 or against it or whatever. But it's there. There's that little bit of level of interactivity that I think is the smart move to make, so that those of us watching the show and are invested in the show actually feel like we're a part of the show.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition. I wasn't sure, because I heard that too. I didn't know if this was the first year. Sounds like it might be.
I think so. It's the first I'm hearing of it.
But I do think that's really cool, because it's very common. I mean, you kind of said it just a few minutes ago, but there's a group of suits sitting at a table who take the votes on these movies or on these songs or whatever. It's like, but you're not the ones consuming this. Why don't you let the people have a say? So and it's the same thing with games. So yeah, I think that's really cool. I'm thinking about actually going on there and voting, just because why not? I haven't as of recording of this, but I might.
I feel like and we'll go over this if we look at some of the categories. I feel like I'm probably not the right person to vote on most of the categories, because actually my video game expertise these days, like my knowledge of like what's going on year by year, like I'm way behind in the times. Like most of the stuff that I think is new, I'll look back and, that came out 2 years ago or whatever. I'm like, that's not new.
I wouldn't even say is it because I feel the same way with a lot, but are we really behind on the times, or is it that there is so much there's so much good stuff, especially this year.
There's a lot of good stuff this year.
So that's why it's going to be an interesting, I think, show in general. But that's the problem. It's like just year by year, just more and more people are making games, big and small, all good, or at least interesting, or at least worth checking out. And it's wild. Like, I don't know, but I guess we should probably just get into it, because we'll be talking about it. Because there's a lot of these nominees that I don't even I've never played the games, but once again, we're basing this off of our predictions on who's going to win. And I feel like you and I know enough about the landscape currently to kind of have a good informed guess. So,
I know my game of the year already, but that will come as no surprise to anybody that follows me on Twitter. So
I know mine too. I'm going to be interested to hear. I want you to give me on these two. We'll kind of briefly go through these, but give me your personal choice as well for some of these. Sure. If you got one that like you're completely split on, like this is going to win, but this is what I wish would win or whatever. I think that'll be fun. Okay. So let's start with best narrative. I'll open this up and read it for a definition. Then I'll also give the game. So best narrative. This is for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game. So here are the games. We have Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Final Fantasy, what Roman numeral is that? Is it like 16 or something?
16, 17? Yeah.
16. Sorry. And then Spider-Man 2. So right off the bat, you see, like, this is just one small example of how many big games have come out this year. I believe Alan Wake's the newest to drop, right? Didn't that just drop recently?
Alan Wake 2 just dropped not more than, like, I don't know, a week or two ago or something like. I mean, yeah, I don't remember when it dropped, but yeah, pretty recently. Is Spider-Man 2 even out yet? I think it is. I think it just dropped too.
It has come out, yeah. But I think also fairly recently, like late summer, early fall or something. I guess I will start here. Now, I'm playing a couple facts, so I actually haven't touched any of these games right here, but I'm familiar with a handful of them and seen some gameplay. But so that being said, I actually think best narrative, I'm giving that one. I think Alan Wake 2 is going to win that. Now, you say it for a couple reasons. I think one, recency bias is going to play a part here, because I don't think Alan Wake is going to win a lot of other awards. But I feel like this one would be a good fit, because aren't they kind of story-heavy? Yeah, I haven't played it.
See, this is the thing with Alan Wake that, and I don't have familiarity with the Alan Wake series, just what it's kind of vaguely about. But like, and when I say vaguely, I mean pretty vaguely. It's very narrative focused, but it's also like, it's the same people that make Control, if you remember Control when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same universe, too. So the Alan Wake story is Alan Wake, Alan Wake 2, the Control universe. It's all the same universe. So there's a ton of story and narrative there, and there's a lot of lore, and there's a lot of hidden stuff to like uncover. And I think there's a lot of fun to be made there if you're a big fan of the series. My concern with it being best narrative is whether or not it's too... cryptic maybe isn't the right word, but too cryptic vibe and not like on the nose enough to win best narrative. Because what I'm thinking of when I think about people that have won, like, I think they won best narrative years past. I'm thinking of like The Last of Us. People talk about how much they love the narrative of The Last of Us. There's nothing cryptic about that story. They're pretty in your face about what's going on and the characters and the dialogue or whatever. And Alan Wake, I haven't actually played those, so fans at home call me out for being wrong here, but it's got that sort of vibe of cryptic, that vibe of mystery. Okay. I just feel like it's probably really good, but probably just not going to win. You know what I mean?
No, fair, yeah. I'm so unfamiliar, I wouldn't have even known that. I'm going to stick with it. I still think that it's not going to take a lot of other things home. That I don't know why I feel that way, but it's also based on where it's placed in other categories, because it's in a few. But so what's your prediction here?
See, I feel like I kind of agree with you. I think Alan Wake is such a beloved franchise. I wouldn't mind seeing it win Best Narrative. I just don't think it will. I personally disqualify Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty. It's an expansion pack to a game that came out in 2020. I just don't think it should count. I just don't think DLC and expansion pack should count for Game of the Year anything. That's just my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me. So that I just disqualify that entirely to me. Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy. For a lot of people, it's too JRPG-y, where the narrative can be kind of wacky and silly and loads of fun, but probably not going to win Best Narrative because it's probably not artsy enough. I just think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to end up winning it because it's Baldur's Gate 3. It's already won a bunch of other game awards already for several different things. Not for the Game Awards, but some other award show happened not too long ago, and they were winning stuff already. And it's such a well-received game. I just feel like they're probably going to end up winning this. Just because it's been so widely acclaimed already. I wouldn't mind seeing Alan Wake 2, though. I wouldn't mind.
Well, it's funny because Baldur's Gate 3 is the one that I want to win because I've seen a lot of people play through it. And stuff.
Baldur's Gate 3 would be my pick, but I like Baldur's Gate 3 a lot, and I've played that one.
So it works out. So your pick is also going to be your prediction. So okay,
my pick is Baldur's Gate 3. I wouldn't mind if it's Alan Wake 2 because I know that that's a very narrative heavy game as well. The other three, I don't see Marvel's Spider-Man 2 winning Best Narrative. I would just be very surprised. I personally disqualify Cyberpunk. And Final Fantasy, I know people love the game. I just don't think it'll win Best Narrative. I just don't think it will.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, we got those here. So let's move on. This is going to go back to what you were just talking about, kind of with the whole DLC thing. So let's go to Best Ongoing. I don't know if this is a new award or not. I haven't seen this before, I don't think, but I could have just forgotten about it. So Best Ongoing is awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time, which is a very modern but probably necessary award at this point, considering how kind of, these kinds of games have become so popular. So the genres vary wildly. So we got Apex Legends, Cyberpunk, again, which I think is an interesting addition here. But
Right.
Final Fantasy 16, Fortnite, and then Genshin Impact. I was thinking about this, and I actually thought, so this isn't about like the Phantom Liberty. This is just Cyberpunk, and Cyberpunk has such an interesting story, as we all know, right? It started off as essentially a laughingstock in a lot of ways, just with all the bugs on those older consoles. And it was so huge. And then it completely turned around. That show came out, and then they kept patching up the games, and now it's like highly revered again. And I think they're going to kind of give Cyberpunk a little bit of a redemption arc here. And I think people are going to vote for Cyberpunk. So that's what I'm picking for my prediction.
I think with Cyberpunk, it really, I just don't agree with it even existing in this category. So I know I already made my stance clear about, it's a game from 2020. They have not been consistently developing this game the last 3 years. They've been consistently patching it to keep the stupid thing alive for the last 3 years. That's it. Mm-hmm. They haven't been developing anything. They haven't been adding new content. They have not been doing that. This isn't a Fortnite situation where they're always releasing new skins, maps, game modes, blah, blah, blah. Apex Legends, same thing. Genshin Impact, same thing. Final Fantasy, I don't know why it's here either. Is Final Fantasy an MMO, or is that... Didn't that just come out this year, or am I on crazy pills? 16 just came out this year, so I don't know why it's ongoing, other than the fact that it's part of the Final Fantasy franchise, but the games aren't all related. So...
No, they're not.
So anyway,
no, they're not. But
I don't understand the Final Fantasy even being here, but Cyberpunk, they just released an expansion pack. It's only here because they released an expansion pack, and that's it. And that's not good enough for me as best ongoing. That's not good enough.
Oh, I love this.
I'm actually... Okay. This is coming... For anyone that thinks I'm like a Cyberpunk hater, loved the game. Haven't played Phantom Liberty. Loved the game. Had it on PC. Played a bunch of it when it came out. Don't get me wrong. Loved it. I just don't think it qualifies in any way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, because best ongoing seems so, though, like, it's actually pretty generic. I mean, like, okay, if they were all like Battle Royale kind of games or these multiplayer games, that would make more sense. Like, I understand. I'm assuming Apex Legends does their seasons thing or whatever. I don't know. I don't play Apex Legends. Fortnite, I know they do all that, right? Like, those two clearly make the most sense. I don't know anything about Genshin Impact, but I've heard of it.
Genshin Impact is made by HoYoverse, and HoYoverse is killing it right now. I'm just going to say that.
Really?
Yeah, they're killing it right now on games. I think the shoe-in to win on Best Ongoing is Genshin Impact, and it's like in that anime verse where a lot of people that aren't like weebs or whatever are probably like, Genshin Impact's that silly, stupid weeb game or whatever. But no, the game is freaking massive, and HoYoverse is killing it in games right now. I think they're a shoe-in to win. That's my vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
This might speak to how little I know about some of these games, because I just wouldn't have even known that. So that's cool. I have heard the name a ton, though. Not the company, but Genshin Impact. So, okay, that's fair. So we got some pretty different answers on this one, but yeah, I don't know what it is about Cyberpunk, but I'm really basing this off of vibe and feel of just what I'm picking up on, and I just feel like this Cyberpunk's on this ongoing redemption to be like, and I know you're right, it's only one DLC, I guess you're right, but I'm just basing it off of how I feel about how other people feel about it. So I don't know if a lot of people share the same feelings that you do about it. I don't know. But
I know a lot of people raved about Phantom Liberty when it came out. I just kind of feel like it's the trap. It's on here because people will vote for it, but the critics won't. If they do, I'll be surprised. I want to read the reasoning behind it if it wins, because it has had one expansion pack, but for the last 3 years, like it's like you said, it was a redemption arc. Not outstanding development. It was, we messed up the first time. We're trying to make it okay. You know what I mean?
Fair. No, I do understand what you're saying. I do get that. I feel like it's going to be some sort of weird like celebration almost. I don't know, and I know like, but you're right. Like I feel like maybe I'm basing it just off player base and not off critics.
Maybe, but
so I guess we'll see.
We will see.
But okay, that's interesting. This is fun. I like this. All right, let's do best independent game. Let's see here.
The best debut indie game, or best independent game. Here it is. I'm trying to follow.
No, just best indie game.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Where's it at?
I can read it for you while you look.
You know what? Why don't you just go ahead and read them? Because that's the only one I can't find.
For outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside the traditional publisher system, our candidates are Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder.
Okay.
This one is an interesting one.
Why don't you go first on this one?
It's indie game, and I try to pay attention to some indie games. I need to Google real quick. I think I know what Dredge is. I think I know that one. Hang on. Dredge game. Is that the one where you are... Yes, that's the... Dredge is indie game developed by New Zealand. Fisherman who encounters Lovecraftian creatures. That's right. This is the... It's a Lovecraft one. You kind of like... I think you build your ship up a little bit and go out to sea and do stuff. So I think this looks like a really fun game. I've seen it. Sea of Stars, actually, I've seen floating around Twitter that it's actually a candidate for a lot of people's Game of the Year, like personal Game of the Year.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So Sea of Stars is getting a ton of attention. I wouldn't be surprised to see it actually win Best Independent Game, because it probably won't actually win Game of the Year, because it's an indie game and we have already just so many good contenders. I don't know. I think for Best Independent Game, I think Sea of Stars is a pretty strong contender here.
You kind of nail it on the head. I agree. Sea of Stars. I've heard about it a lot, at least in the content that I listen to and watch or whatever. It's thrown around a lot. Never played it. Don't know much about it, but I'm intrigued just by how much people talk about it. So I do agree with you there. I will say that I have dabbled in a little bit of Dave the Diver, and that is actually a really great game.
I've seen that one. I know what that one is. I haven't played it, but I've seen it, and it looks fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's Moonlighter-esque.
Yeah,
in terms of kind of the gameplay loop, which is it's totally different feel, but it's kind of a similar idea. Anyway, I recommend kind of looking into that, but I've dabbled with it, and it's fun.
I've played Moonlighter.
Not very
I remember
familiar
Moonlighter.
with the other two.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Cocoon, I'll be honest.
fun.
And Viewfinder, I'm not familiar with, I'll be honest.
Cool. All right. Sea of Stars, we're locking it in there. We both were in sync on that one.
I wouldn't mind seeing Dredge win, because it's just Lovecraft, and my inner emo wants to like play that game myself. But I just think it'll be Sea of Stars.
All right, let's do. I'm looking at the time here. You know what we might do?
We can go over. We can just do a whole episode on this if we want.
That's what I was just gonna say, dude. I was just gonna say, why don't we'll hold the tier list for later, and we'll just knock this out. Do you want to take a quick break and come back and do the second half?
Let's come back to the second half. We're going to go over some more of these nominees and our thoughts on them. And stay tuned for our picks on Game of the Year.
Profoundish is brought to you in part by Alex Duquette Medleys. I make theme song medleys, which is where I take a bunch of theme songs and mash them up into one bite-sized song. From Nickelodeon to Adult Swim, I cover it all. So, if you want to take a fun nostalgic trip, search my name, Alex Duquette, on YouTube, or go to alexduquette.net.
Profoundish is brought to you in part by Magic Man Mo, a gaming YouTube channel run by me. We stream and we do variety Let's Plays. Check out a short stream compilation to see if it's something that you're going to be into. It's a lot of fun. I made it, so I know. That's Magic Man Mo on YouTube.
Well, welcome back, everybody.
Yeah.
We are going to continue our predictions here for all kinds of different categories in the Game Awards this year. Our next one up is going to be Best Action Adventure Game. The thing is now with all of these games in general is that all games now fuse like a bunch of different kind of pieces of genres together. It's so hard to like limit some of these, because there's also one now that's like just best action game. There's action adventure games, and there's RPG, and we're going to go to that in a minute. And there's a game or two on there that I almost wouldn't even think would be on there. It's interesting how that's happened. But so action adventure is so vague, because all of these games I'm about to list are, I understand why they're in action adventure, but they're all have a lot of differences too. So, all right, best action adventure game. This is for the best action adventure game combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving, which is a fair description, I guess I'd say. But some action adventure games don't have any puzzle stuff in it. So, like, I don't know.
Some action adventure games, so, like, sometimes they have very light puzzles. So it's, like, literally, push this block here. Oh, a door I can walk through. Sometimes the puzzles are just very light. Because there's a difference between an adventure game and literally a puzzle game,
I also might have a little bit of a skewed opinion on puzzles because Zelda, and they always really emphasize puzzles, but it's also definitely not a puzzle game.
Okay, that's true.
But we'll go through this. All right, so we got action-adventure games. We have Alan Wake 2. We got Spider-Man 2. These are so huge games. Resident Evil 4. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So I have an explanation, and I think Weston knows what I'm going to say on this one. So
I think so.
But here's why, though. So I think Tears of the Kingdom will take this, and I also want it to take it, because I know that it will not take Game of the Year this year. It innovated in its own ways, but it did not do what Breath of the Wild did when that won Game of the Year, whatever year that was.
Yeah.
Right? It's a sequel. So I think it definitely is a contender for Game of the Year, but I think that's going to go to a different game that we'll get to. So I still think Zelda's, it's going to take something home. It's Zelda. Whether or not the other games are great is almost irrelevant, because Zelda always takes something, for better or worse. It just does. So based on that, and I love it, and it's a great game, I'm going to say Tears of the Kingdom. However, I'm not going to downplay Spider-Man. I know that first game was huge. And the thing is with these other games, though, no, actually, I'm including Zelda in this to a slightly lesser degree, but I'm also including it. Other than Alan Wake, I'm going to say that all of these games came out and they were really big, but I feel like none of them, there's no staying power. Like, for example, Spider-Man, I don't know when that came out, but it's been out, but I just feel like it's already not being talked about as much. Not saying it's a bad game. Maybe it's because there's a lot of competition, and I'm curious how you feel about this too, but I feel like, or Jedi Survivor, I feel like people were really excited about it, and then it had its month, and then no one talks about it now. Same thing with Tears of the Kingdom. That, for me, and once again, I'm in that circle more, but, I only heard people talking about it for a couple months, and then it kind of went away. So that is another reason why I kind of feel like Tears of the Kingdom is going to take this one. I feel like it had a little bit longer staying power, maybe just because it's such a big name. I don't know. All these great games, I just feel like they come and they go, at least this year. Do you feel that way at all? It just comes and goes, like there's just so much?
Well, I think there's a clear reason for that. Action adventure games typically are shorter in scale and scope in terms of like how long you play them for, typically, because action games tend to, like, because there's so much going on at one point in time, like at any given moment in the game, that they usually fly by. People play them, you get through the story, and then, if the game's over, you probably aren't going to replay it over and over and over and over and over again. Typically, something like Marvel Spider-Man 2, like, you're like, oh, people aren't really talking about that anymore, or people are, but like it's not like crazy. Same thing with Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
Alan Wake, I still hear a few things here and there. Definitely not Star Wars Jedi Survivor. No one's really talking about that anymore, as in, like, still playing it. But, like, you play through it once, maybe twice if you loved it, and it kind of moves on. I will say the exception to that is probably Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, which of all of these five, I think definitely has the biggest scope in terms of like how long you're going to be playing the game. It's got a lot more adventure aspect to it than I think these other four have. The other four lean more heavily on the action side, whereas Legend of Zelda leans much more on the adventure side. So it's a little unfair of a comparison in terms of just the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom sticking out like a little bit from the other four. But I kind of agree with you. I think it's going to have the staying power to win it's definitely got action in it, and it's definitely got way more classic adventure elements, the puzzles, and a lot more to keep you invested in the game itself. I think if it's going to win anything, I think it's going to win this.
That's how I feel. Yeah.
I'm always weird about picking sequels for the best of anything. I know Tears of the Kingdom is technically a sequel, but it's not going to get any of the accolades like Breath of the Wild did. Like you said, I agree. But Alan Wake 2 is a sequel. Spider-Man's a sequel. Resident Evil 4 is like technically a remake.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Wow.
So like usually I completely disqualify remakes when I choose my game choices. But I'm not super familiar with the Resident Evil franchise on a whole to know how much changed and got updated, because those games have been made and remade many times over the years. So usually I disqualify them from my brain, so I just don't really count it. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is weird that it tried to do like a Star Wars meets almost a Dark Souls vibe, which is mechanically probably fun. But I just don't see Star Wars actually winning anything except maybe soundtrack, because everyone loves Star Wars music. I just don't actually see it winning the category. So I'm going to say Tears of the Kingdom here too.
I think you nailed it too. I think it is kind of interesting though, and that's why it would be so hard to pick these categories, because you kind of mentioned it before in terms of sheer scope. Zelda is by far the biggest game in here. But it's like they all still kind of fit. That's what I mean. Like these categories, it's so like, and I guess you're right. You said, one's that's more adventure, the others are more action.
Adventure is hard.
That, but it is hard. I would hate to be the group that picks these games. But either way, you have to admit, all of the games on this list, I mean, these are all highly praised games. I don't know about Resident Evil 4. I'm assuming it's highly praised. I mean, people loved the original.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the funny thing about Resident Evil in the recent last couple of years, Resident Evil, I feel like, has made a weird resurgence in popularity. It's still in the horror side of things, so it's like kind of still niche because a lot of people just don't like horror games. So it's still kind of keeping in its own bubble a little bit, but that bubble's much bigger than it used to be, say, 8 years ago, I think.
It does feel that way. And I when what was it called? Was it the one last year that came out? Everyone had a crush on the lady in it.
Yeah, the Lady Dimitris, whatever the heck her name, Lady D. That game came out a couple of years ago. The Village.
That game itself, Village. That's it. Resident Evil Village. I feel like that was kind of I don't know if that was that great of a game. I never played it. It's not my style. But just based on what I saw on the landscape of it all, it really looked like it kind of blew up.
That one really did.
What just, your Resident Evil people are always going to play it, but I feel like that one went to more people. More people are like, well, I want to check this out, Who knows? Maybe it was just for the lady. I don't know.
It might have been just for the dommy mommy, as the kids say. And I hate that I put that in a sentence.
Yeah, that was a strange sentence, so we're going to move on before it gets weirder. So, next up, this is a tough one for me. But maybe not for the reason you'd expect. So, okay, this one is Best RPG, which also, now, just what an RPG is what that could be, at least. Even looking at this list, I feel like can mean a whole lot of different things, right? So, Best RPG, for the best game designed with rich player character customization and progression, including massively multiplayer experiences. So, here are the games. Here we got Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and Starfield. We've kind of bouncing back and forth. Why don't you go first on this one?
This one is interesting. I'm split personally into two camps in terms of who I think will win this. My gut instinct tells me Baldur's Gate 3 will win this. It's literally an RPG game. That's its whole shtick. So, that seems like a shoo-in for me, and it's just been so critically acclaimed that it seems like a shoo-in to me. The only hang-up in my mind is whether or not Sea of Stars is more popular than I realize, and it will get more critical acclaim in terms of just being... because I haven't actually played it myself. If it just happens to be critically really well received, maybe. I don't see Starfield getting it. Starfield's been kind of... people are playing it and enjoying it, but it's pretty wishy-washy. Lies of P feels too niche. it's kind of trying to do the Bloodborne thing a little bit, and I think it's having an identity issue where people aren't taking to it. So critically, I don't know if it does anything unique in its niche to like really get best RPG. And Final Fantasy is a strange one. I feel like the Final Fantasy camp is screaming at me like, of course it would be Final Fantasy 16, but I just don't know enough about 16 to know that it would have the leg up on Baldur's Gate 3. So critically speaking, I just feel like Final Fantasy 16 will lose out to Baldur's Gate 3, and the only thing that could just come out of nowhere is if Sea of Stars just is that critically, like, applauded.
Right. You know, that's interesting. Like, I'm stuck, because there have been years in the past where we watch the Game Awards, and, like, there's, like, a single game that, like, gets a bunch of awards. I remember Breath of the Wild was that one year, and then the Hades was another big one. Hades took a bunch of awards that year, right? Which is a fantastic game.
Hades was my vote for Game of the Year that year. But
then there's been other years where I swear it feels like okay, let's give this game this because this game's not getting this. No one's. I'm not saying anyone's actually doing that, but it feels that way some years.
Sometimes, yeah.
This one is tough because, so I talked to you back when it first came out. I was playing Starfield, but my opinion of it has changed, as with many people. It's kind of like what you said. You weren't really interested in it because it just looks like another Bethesda game, and you're kind of just not really ready for another Bethesda experience again, you know. And I was hoping it was going to be more than that. Bethesda expanded, and like they tried different things, but it's just another Bethesda game. It's good. It's polished. It's probably the most polished one I've ever played. But I kind of dipped out, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. So I originally put down Starfield, not because I want it to win, because my personal vote would be Baldur's Gate myself, and I haven't even played it personally. But I just feel like Starfield, whether I know the maybe the player opinion has kind of been skewed and changed over these past few months, but it's still really big. Like, it's still a really massive game, and it was really big when it first dropped. Sea of Stars, I mean, more people may be talking about that. I don't know. Once again, I'm not sure the scope of its audience either, kind of like you said. But I was bouncing back and forth, and I think just to be a little different, I think I'm going to stick with it. I think, for better or for worse, I think Starfield will win Best RPG. I think based on critic response, I feel like that one's just the biggest and most probably, maybe, I don't know if accessible is the right word, but like Starfield's more accessible than Baldur's Gate 3 is, I'd say.
I think in a lot of regards, accessibility, I think you're not wrong there, but it's weird because I almost feel like Starfield doesn't belong in RPG at all. It's almost
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
It just doesn't belong in RPG. It's an action adventure game with RPG elements.
With RPG little sprinkles in there. Exactly. And that's where I felt weird about it, but I still feel like that's going to be the one, even though the clear RPG, the most RPG-est RPG, at least the two, are Baldur's Gate and Final Fantasy. So
right. I think those are the two most RPG games here. You're not wrong. I agree.
So, but it's funky seeing some of these names in here. I didn't even know Sea of Stars really had any sort of RPG elements to it. I didn't realize that.
Actually, Sea of Stars has a lot of classic, not like modern RPG, but a lot of classic RPG to it. So I think the two most modern RPG games are Baldur's Gate 3 and Final Fantasy 16, and Sea of Stars is a little bit more classic. So I think those are the three maybe most RPG here. The thing with Starfield is that, like, of all of the stuff I've seen on it that like pops up on like my YouTube shorts, it's just people trying to exploit the game or complaining about, like, fast traveling. I don't know what the game's about. And when you're playing a game where you role play, I don't know what the game's about. Whereas literally all the other ones...
That's a fair...
Yeah, I do. So it's like, it just feels like it's an action-adventure game pretending to be an RPG. I don't know. I know what you're saying. where it'll end up
getting... That is
what
it is, yeah.
Yeah, it'll get voted for because it's Bethesda or something. I feel like if it wins, this is what I'm going to say, about how I was talking about award shows being stuffy. I feel like if Starfield wins Best RPG, we know that the suits care more about adhering to appeasing Microsoft and Sony and the big names than they actually do the quality of the game in their respective field. Because I just don't think Starfield belongs here. But that's my opinion.
No, once again, I share it, but I'm just afraid that will be the result. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. Another one to keep an eye on. All right, next up, this is an interesting list because I'm personally not connected to any of these, but we've got the best sim strategy game. Now, you and I are both fans of sim strategy games in general, and so I thought it'd be fun to throw on there. I'm curious if you've touched any of these, but best game focused on real-time or turn-based simulation or strategy gameplay, irrespective of platform. So, here are the games. We got Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, so there's another... I think that's a remake, right, from old Game Boy games or something.
It's a remake of 1 and 2.
Which apparently were loved at the time. I never touched those games. But anyway, next up is Cities Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. I'll take it first here, I guess. So I have not touched a single one of these games. I am highly familiar with Cities because I played a crap ton of Cities Skylines 1. And I'm familiar with Pikmin. I played some of the older ones. They're okay. They're not my cup of tea. But this is tough because the hype for Cities was huge. And then I'm sure you know enough about it. I don't know if you played it or not, but enough to know that the reviews at this point are mixed on it.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of potential here, but right now, kind of wait on it until they fix some stuff or whatever it is. I don't know all the details about it. Point is, this is tough because the other ones I just don't feel like have the big enough... Advance Wars, that's got a cult following, but that doesn't seem like a big enough game for everyone to... I just don't feel like that. I feel the same way about Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem has its core cult kind of audience. Now, I don't know about Company of Heroes. Do you know anything about that game?
It comes so Company of Heroes, the older ones are really beloved games, and I've never played any of them myself. I didn't realize Company of Heroes 3 came out this year, but yeah, I had to look it up. It came out in February.
Okay.
So yeah, it was an early one. Same thing with Fire Emblem Engage. I was like, didn't that come out last year? And it came out in literally January. So I kind of forgot these games came out this year. I feel like...
Right. I mean, it's crazy.
I feel like Company of Heroes definitely a good strategy candidate, but I'm only aware of its existence peripherally. I don't think anybody really talked about it being good this year. These are interesting choices. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot, again, I disqualify personally because it's a remake, so I don't really care. Yep. Cities Skylines 2 didn't, to my knowledge, do anything fundamentally different to innovate on the first game, so disqualified. Pikmin 4, I didn't know they released a fourth one. I didn't know they were still making Pikmin games. I'm sure it's a phenomenal game, but I don't know if they did anything new from the previous Pikmin games, so I have no idea. So I'm just going to leave that one to the side as a big question mark for me. I'm between Company of Heroes 3 and Fire Emblem Engage, and honestly, I think Fire Emblem Engage should take it for strategy.
Well, I was actually thinking, it's funny, you were kind of in line on this one, because I was thinking about those two too, but I only threw Company of Heroes in there because I did just a quick search on it. I never really even heard of it until I did that quick search, but I just don't know, because I'm trying to think of just sheer popularity. I really don't know if one is more popular than the other. I'm a little more familiar with Fire Emblem, but that's just because they're heavily associated with Nintendo, and I'm really in that circle a lot with all those games. So, but I don't... You know what I mean? So I'm kind of basing it off of that, sheer popularity. And I guess if I were to say that, maybe there's probably a more at least dedicated audience to Fire Emblem. I know a lot of those games are really good, but these both seem like kind of more niche games. I mean, I guess sim strategy are more niche than like action adventure, I guess. But basically what I'm saying is I came into this not with an answer yet. It was between these two. I'm just going to throw the bone to Fire Emblem, I think, for no real reason other than I'm just more familiar with it, I guess.
I could see people like being a little ruffled about Fire Emblem Engage because visually it looks like maybe it belongs in, I don't know, RPG or something, because it's a kind of like a team tactics strategy as opposed to Company of Heroes. Company of Heroes as a game looks a lot more like a strategy game. You know, you're moving like groups of soldiers and tanks and stuff around, you're commanding actions and stuff. It looks a lot more strategy than Fire Emblem Engage looks like, but Fire Emblem Engage has the better has been better received than Company of Heroes. So I just feel like between those two, Fire Emblem probably edges out just in terms of reception.
Right. And that's kind of, and why I ended up kind of, I think, leaning towards that too. I think there is probably, if I were to guess, well, yeah, actually you just said it best, perception. We'll move on from that. I think that's good. Yeah. We'll see. Once again, I am curious about Cities, though. I want to, like, play it. I have to be in the mood to play a game like that. But once I am, I'm thinking about it because I've heard that some of the features on there are pretty cool, but there's some other weird omissions that were in the first one that aren't in this one. It's like really strange what they did over there. But
well, also the first one had like a zillion DLC and expansions. So like if Skylines 2 is releasing missing a bunch of stuff, we have to remember that Skylines 1 was also missing a lot of stuff. If you've been playing 1 and all of its expansions, oh yeah, it's a very in-depth, very, like, you know, there's a lot there, where Skylines 2 just came out, so it doesn't have any extra bells and whistles. It's going to be kind of bare bones in comparison, so it's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, I mean, as we already know, I mean, people are pretty mixed on it, so. Okay, cool, so we got two more here. I'm curious your answer on this one. So we got most anticipated game. Let me read this. I'm loading it up. All right. Most anticipated game. Recognizing an announced game that has as you say, demonstrably?
Demonstrably. Yeah.
Demonstrably?
Yeah.
I've never seen that word before. I mean, I know what it means,
you're right.
But
like
I've never seen it.
Demonstrateably is the idea.
Right.
Yeah.
That is demonstrably illustrated potential to push the gaming medium forward. That's a very epic description there. Okay, so for most anticipated game, we have Final Fantasy. I don't know my Roman numerals. What number is that? Do you know?
7.
Final. Oh, that's gonna be, I'm assuming, a big one. 7.
Well, yeah, because
right.
it's supposed to be a 3-parter. I think Final Fantasy 7. Obviously, it was originally one game, and now they're like making it into 3 parts for the remake. So this is Rebirth.
Okay. So Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Hades 2. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Star Wars Outlaws, and Tekken 8. So, I don't know, shout out to my Tekken. I used to be a big Tekken fan back in the day. So, this is, I hate to say it, this is another one of those examples where I'm not, there's a couple I'm familiar with. But in general, I don't have a lot to say. Like, I don't really know much about Star Wars Outlaws. I'm not really into Star Wars, so I don't really know. Like a Dragon, correct me if I'm wrong, these are spin-offs off of that bigger game series. What's it called?
Yakuza?
These are spin-offs, right?
Is it in the Yakuza universe, I think, ? It looks like it is.
Yes, it's like a spin-off or in the universe or something. Yeah, I do know that. I want to try one of those games out.
I've played a bit of Zero.
I'd be into it.
And of what I played of it, I enjoyed it. Apparently, the whole franchise is just really goofy and just a ton of fun. And I want to play more of them, and I haven't. So,
okay, I've kind of heard the same thing, so that might be kind of fun. My vote here, or my prediction rather, I think is going to be to Hades 2, and I think it's just because Hades was just so damn big, and like, and I feel like, no, I'm curious because this is anticipated, so I'm curious how you feel, because I know you're you're kind of averse to the sequels. So I'm curious what you're going to say here. But
everything here really arguably is a sequel except for Outlaws, Star Wars Outlaws.
Basically. I guess you're right, actually, yeah. So, yeah, I'm saying Hades 2. That's also my personal choice anyway, just because I'm such a big Hades fan. Funny enough, though, I forgot that there even was an announcement for Hades 2. I think it's been a little while since we've heard about that. But
I'll be honest, I didn't know there was one coming out at all. I've completely missed that. I didn't even know.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever knew either. So that was kind of a pleasant surprise when I opened up this category on the website.
I know this is the first time I'm hearing of it, looking at it right this moment. I'm like, oh, right, great.
So but I think my personal wish is also going to coincide with the general consensus. So I'm going to say Hades 2.
I think it's the most anticipated game, and I'm going to lean on it having to be Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy is a massive franchise in its own right, period.
You're right.
7 in particular is a beloved game. And when they announced the remake that brought a whole slew of new hype to Final Fantasy, I just feel like 7 Rebirth is probably going to be, of everything here, the most anticipated. Fighting games, like with Tekken 8, is always its kind of own niche. Like, it's popular, but it's a fighting game, and that usually has a hard time getting a wider appeal to people that maybe are used to playing FPSs or something. Star Wars Outlaws. Yeah. Star Wars is such a mixed bag when you look at their games in general, that like I feel like there's hype for the Star Wars nerds every time, but so many people have been burned by so many Star Wars games that it never actually like reaches like cyberpunk levels of anticipation, right? I want to say Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, I think has the most potential to be the second part of this nomination. Again, the illustrated potential to push the gaming medium forward, because I think Final Fantasy VII is going to do most of what it's already been doing, because it's a multi-part thing. So I don't think it's really going to push anything. Hades 2, again, Hades 1, I praised a great deal when it came out, but I don't think Hades 2 is going to push anything wildly different from the first game. Again, this is the first time I'm even seeing it was announced.
Probably right.
So I don't know. I could be wrong here, but I have my doubts that it's going to do anything demonstrably different. So I think Like a Dragon has the best chance of doing any of that of these games, just because the franchise isn't afraid to like do goofy things. But I think what will actually win is Final Fantasy VII. My vote is Like a Dragon, but I think Final Fantasy VII will win.
You know, Final Fantasy VII, I was thinking about that one, but I actually mainly decided against it. Maybe, once again, I'm thinking too much about just the players and not the critics, maybe, but wasn't the remake of 7, because this isn't that. The remake's already out. Once again, I'm so unfamiliar with Final Fantasy, so I don't claim to know, but I know like there's the Final Fantasy VII remake, and wasn't that kind of a mixed bag? Like that game itself, like it was like, mixed reviews on it. Like there's so much anticipation that it kind of wasn't maybe a letdown, but kind of mixed.
I think
it was praised. I can't remember.
When they remade 7, when the new one came out a couple of years ago, I think the biggest letdown was just that it was going to be multi-part. I think a lot of people were expecting it to be this massive game that had the entirety of the original game in it. And when it was like, oh no, that's going to be like 3 parts, I think people were bummed about that, because instead of like paying $60-$70 for one game, if you want to own all of the remade Final Fantasy VII, you're going to end up spending almost $200 because it's like 3 parts. I think that was a lot of the issue I saw. But like, as someone who never played the original Final Fantasy VII, because it was a little bit before my time in terms of, like, I didn't play RPGs back then, so it was a little bit before my time. Right. I haven't played 7, so to me it's like just a whole new trilogy of a Final Fantasy game as far as I'm concerned. So it's not really that shocking to me, but I think that's what I mostly heard. I think a lot of people enjoyed the game itself, though.
Okay.
I thought
that very well could be. I could I've always wanted to, like, I played one Final Fantasy game, and it was, I know some of the earlier numbers are screwed up when they were back on, like, the Super Nintendo days.
Yeah.
But I I kind of want to hop in there and just see, just to see if I'd like it. I mean, I like similar games to it, especially the old school ones. Like, I love some of these newer kind of games that I don't know anything about the 3D ones, but like the 2D sprite ones with your classic just turn-based combat sort of situation going on. Like, I love those new games that Square's putting out now that are like, they look like the old games, but they're new, like Octopath. That was a really fun game. Those sorts of games. So, like, I am curious to, like, go back to the beginning, basically, and play some of these older Final Fantasy games, but I would not know where to start, because now there's, like, so many games. And there's so many versions of the same game, I've learned. Like, there's, like, 3 versions of, like, Final Fantasy X or something. I don't know, I could be wrong on the number.
If you want to get into the Final Fantasy franchise, there's a lot to sift through. So it's kind of like,
I know,
pick one and just go for it, because they're not actually necessarily related to each other. So you just pick one and go for it.
And just take a chance.
Or play Sea of Stars.
All right.
Because it's got
actually, you know what,
that kind of vibe to it, too.
Yeah, and that's... out of all of these that we've been talking about, Sea of Stars has been the most intriguing to me. Just with how many people are talking about it. So, all right. Game of the year.
Oh, boy. Are we doing it?
We're adding the pressure, but we're both going to say the same game. Hold on. Let me... where are we at here? You want to read them off? Because I can't
Game
find
of the
it.
year.
Oh, it's first one.
Yeah.
But still read it. Go ahead.
Recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. The nominations are Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We have 6 nominees in this category, as opposed to the 5 we've been looking at before. And, I think, again, anyone that's been following me on Twitter or anywhere knows exactly where I stand on this, both what I think should win and what my personal vote would be. Coordinate perfectly in line with just Baldur's Gate 3.
So, funny enough, you may be surprised to know that on both fronts, I agree with you. And it's mainly for me, and I haven't even played Baldur's Gate 3. For me, it's that this was a game that was, obviously, it always had its fan base. It kind of really came out of nowhere and took the world by storm. And it just felt like it got bigger than it's ever gotten before, and it expanded to a wider audience more so than it ever has before. And everybody and their mothers was playing this game, plus the critical acclaim. But to me, the critical acclaim is only part of it. To me, it's really just... this game kind of came out of nowhere and just got huge. And out of every game on this list, I think, and I'm including Zelda in this, I feel like its staying power has lasted the longest. Which is tough in a year with because all 6 of these games are highly praised, really good games. So the fact that it's still stuck around and stayed in the public conscience, at least the gaming conscience, for as long as it has, that alone, as an outsider, makes me think Baldur's Gate's going to take it. So... plus, everyone I've seen play it makes me want to play it so damn bad. I just haven't yet. And just everything about it, just everything. So, and obviously you could have more to say because you've actually played through quite a bit of it. But yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 on my end too. And to me, honestly, it's not even that close. Just in sheer excitement alone. You know what I mean? Like, Spider-Man came out. Mm-hmm. Who was really talking about that, right? Zelda came out. People were talking about it, but then a month went by and nobody was. Mario, probably the same thing. I don't really know much about that, to be honest. I think they all are kind of the same way. There's been a trickle, but with Baldur's Gate, I just feel like it's been really at the forefront of our minds as gamers, or in the gaming world, longer than any of these other games have. And I think that alone is a huge reason for me picking that one.
It's a game that we talked a little bit about people, usually, especially the action adventure. You play a game, you play it once or twice through, and you're done with it, and you kind of stop talking about it because you played the game and it's over. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that is highly replayable with so many ways to approach the game. And not only is it replayable, so many people are. Like, oh, I want to play through with this run. this class. I want to play good or evil or the dark urge or like all these different ways to approach the game or with these companions, those companions. Not only are there so many different ways to replay the game, lots of people are doing it, which is why it sticks around, I think, in the public eye for as long as it has. Probably long enough that people are getting tired of hearing about it. Some people are getting tired of hearing about it.
Sure.
I know I mentioned that I don't usually think very favorably of sequels generally in these award shows. Baldur's Gate 2, for anyone unfamiliar, came out in 2000. So this is 23 years later. It's not a direct sequel. It's just in the same universe. So that's why it gets a little bit of a pass on my sequel thing, because it's not like a direct sequel. You don't need to have played 1 and 2 to play Baldur's Gate 3 at all. I haven't played 1 or 2. Mechanically speaking, it took the approach of being a turn-based game as opposed to real-time game. So mechanically speaking, there's a difference between the past games and this game. There's enough of a difference there that it truly is its own thing. And the reason I bring that up is because that's so much more appealing to me as a nomination than Alan Wake 2 is a sequel. Not to knock it for being a good game, but it's a sequel. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a sequel. Resident Evil 4 is a remake. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is another Super Mario game. Not to knock it. I'm sure it plays very well. Mario games are typically very well quality controlled. So I'm sure it's great, but it's another Mario game. But you know what to
expect.
Yeah. I'm sure it's fantastic. Baldur's Gate 3 is a very specific niche of CRPG that most people would normally overlook. It broke barriers. Like, people that don't touch CRPGs are playing Baldur's Gate 3 as their first CRPG. People that have no idea about D&D, because it's based on Dungeons and Dragons. People that have no idea getting into Baldur's Gate 3. Studios are talking about Baldur's Gate 3. Like, it just seems like such an obvious choice for the impact it made from a lesser-known studio. Larian isn't an unknown studio. They made the Divinity series for people that... or Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2 were two acclaimed CRPGs in their own right as well, but they were less popular than Baldur's Gate was by a long mile. So, like, Larian has been developing their craft, and I think they just brought out all of their best game when it came to developing Baldur's Gate 3. The claims about the game being bugless on launch were highly exaggerated. There's bugs, but, like, few and far between, plays very well. The dialogue between the characters is very natural. The universe is, like, well thought out. Mechanically, everything makes sense. I don't know. I can't gush about it enough. I have gushed about it everywhere that I've talked about it on my podcast. I think I gushed about it on this podcast previously. Good game. It's just a shoe-in to me.
What was I going to say? A part of me, for my personal vote for it to be Game of the Year, is primarily because I kind of want a deep RPG like this to win, because you don't see that very often. A lot of the time, it's a little bit more of a general sort of game.
Yeah.
Like, what was it last year? Last year was big game. What was it? Elden Ring. You know, the year before, point is, I know, because I looked back, I can't remember what they are now.
Elden Ring was
but
2022, and 2021 was It Takes Two, actually, which was a kind of a breakout choice.
That's right, It Takes Two.
Yeah.
But so, like, in general, you don't really see, like, a deep RPG like this come this far, because, you know, it's got its select audience who are kind of into that sort of thing. Not everyone's into turn-based, whatever, and all just the deep, rich, kind of like narrative experience you can go through. But as you said, this game blew the crap up, and it doesn't apologize for being in the genre niche that it is, and which I think is really cool that so many people are playing it. So I'm kind of wanting that to win, almost for that reason too. Like, give a game like this some love, and clearly it's getting it. So I'm totally with it. I love my Zelda, and I always will. But this particular time, I do think this deserves Game of the Year. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I think it's obvious. Yeah, boom indeed. We're not going to see, and it's Baldur's Gate 3. We're not going to see a Baldur's Gate 3 2, and it's not, like, this is just a one and done until we see Baldur's Gate 4 a decade from now. So or longer. So, like, it just makes sense. It's not something that's going to get milked.
Yeah,
it's not meant to be part 1, part 2. They just did an amazing job, one and done, with zero plans when they released the game. Zero plans to even make any DLC or expansions for it. Larian has said that they're like, we made this and we're just going to be like, oh, we're going to take a vacation now and we're done. And it exploded instead. So everyone's like begging them for expansions. But the point is, from a studio point of view, they made this with the intention of it just being a good game in its own right, and then let's move on. But the players have demanded otherwise.
So that's a toughie. That's a whole other conversation to have. Because imagine the legacy that this would continue to develop if they never made another. That was it. It would it'd be kind of like the like the Half-Life thing or something, right? Like, you're always wanting the other one, but guess what? It may not ever meet our expectations ever again. This was lightning in a bottle moment. You know what I mean? It could be one of those sort of things. So who knows? But who knows? Or they'll listen and we'll see a 4 in 10 years, like you said.
Right. Like, I kind of suspect it'll be a one and done thing until another Baldur's Gate license gets handed out, and I hope it goes to Larian. They did such a good job that whenever Baldur's Gate 4 happens, God knows when, I hope Larian takes up the mantle again. But until that time, I don't think we're going to see a sequel to this game anytime soon. So,
which I appreciate, actually. I think that's cool. So.
And that's all.
Right.
That's all
well,
to say. If it doesn't win this year, it never will. So that's why I'm saying, like, yes.
Right. Give it its proper due, and I think it deserves it. Ladies and gentlemen, those were our predictions for Game of the Year. We would love to know what yours are. If you're listening on over on YouTube, leave it in the comments. I'm going to have a question in Spotify as well, so you can always put it in there too. While you're at it, you can also continue the conversation with us all over the social media landscape. We're on Instagram. We have a Twitter. Where else? We're on TikTok. So shoot us a message. Tell us what you think about this. We'd like to know. Weston.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Mostly Magic Man Mo over on YouTube, where I do gaming content. Since we're talking about games, if you want to watch me stream some stuff, as of recording this, I'm finishing up The Walking Dead Season 1. So if that's your style, check that out. I play all kinds of random things, so there's lots of stuff to find there. I've got a website, westonhasty.com, for all the other stuff that I do, too. I do some poetry, and I do some, like, what's the other thing I do? Oh, I got my other podcast, a Hasty podcast that infrequently releases. So if you like podcasts, that one drops into the Spotify box or every now and again. So check that out. Yeah. Say hi to me on Twitter, at Weston Hasty.
Send them some love. Are you still in your evil arc?
Dude,
on Twitter or no?
Dude, I don't even know. Probably not.
Check it in.
I think I failed at my villain arc that I started months ago. I don't think that ever happened. Yeah.
Okay.
I tried. I failed.
Never took off.
It never took off. I don't know how to be evil.
That's okay. We'll talk.
I don't know how to be a jerk.
We'll figure that out.
I want to be mean and a jerk to people, and I don't know how to do it.
We'll talk about it in between episodes here, and you'll see a completely different Weston in our next episode.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna wear.
Just you wait.
I'm gonna wear eyeshadow.
You're really acting out now. Eyeshadow? Wow.
Yeah.
It's like, Mom, I'm just expressing myself.
It's not a phase, Mom. It's who I really am.
It's not a phase. You can, speaking of games, I guess I'll stick in the same category. You can find me at alexduquette.net to see all the musical things I do. But with video games, I highly recommend you go to YouTube and type in VGM Quest. First thing that comes up, it'll be my channel. I do over there. I've done one video, but I'm working on another already, where I do deep dives and retrospectives on video game soundtracks and video game music. So if you want to learn a little bit or just kind of celebrate a soundtrack you already know with me, you should head over there. Currently, if you're a Zelda fan, I did just do the soundtrack to Ocarina of Time. And it's been fun having little conversations in the comments over there. So head on by and subscribe to VGM Quest and check out that video. I would appreciate that. So you can see a cute little comment from Weston. He left a comment on there.
I'm over there.
He loves when I sing the shop song.
Yeah.
So, and
you have to watch the video to know what that means. Watch his video. The shop song is great.
What's it mean? You don't even need to know what it is to enjoy it. So hop on over there, VGM Quest. But for now, we're going to get going. Once again, we're Profoundish. You can find us on all the places. You already heard about the social media places. Once again, Spotify, Apple, you can go there. On Apple, listen, if you're an Apple listener, and I know you're out there because I see you right now. Take off your glasses. Look at me. Yep, I see you. Somebody did it. Somebody had glasses and they took them off.
I'll have to take your word for it. I don't see them. This is an Alex thing. He's using his powers.
Well, Weston also doesn't have his glasses on right now, so he couldn't see anyway.
I'd never not have my glasses on.
That's fair. I've rarely seen you without them. Anyway, point is, follow us over on Apple Podcasts. If you're a listener over there, make sure you leave us a rating. Ratings are huge for Apple Podcasts, and they would go a long way to get our podcast to more people. So, but that's all. Thank you for listening, everybody. And until next time.
All right.
All right.